Hi historians, today you're going to be looking at the British Empire and dealing with the question as to who it benefited the most. So, you need to know what an empire is, and for those of you that don't, an empire is a collection of areas of land or even countries that are ruled over and controlled by one leading or so-called mother country. The places that are controlled by the mother country are usually known as colonies. And about 100 years ago, Britain, Great Britain, ruled the largest empire that the world has ever seen, even bigger than the Roman Empire, ruling about 450 million people in 56 areas or colonies around the world. And if you look at source A on the screen in front of you, you can see by comparing Britain's colonies in the world in 1745 and the colonies represented in red by 1901, you can see how during this period the British Empire grew across the world and we took on more and more colonies. Now there are various reasons for this that we could get into. Obviously Britain had been interested in exploring and trading abroad since the days really of Queen Elizabeth, the back end of the 1500s. But as well as that, also you have the Industrial Revolution that's been going on in Britain in the early 1700s throughout the 18th century. So therefore getting valuable raw materials that you could use to make stuff in your new factories was important, and a lot of those were abroad. And as well as that, also the stuff that you made in these factories during the Industrial Revolution you wanted to sell to other countries too. So the idea of having bits of Britain, colonies, an empire elsewhere around the world would make people in Britain, businessmen and traders and merchants, a lot of money. Now there are other reasons as well. Obviously if you own different parts of the world it makes you a very powerful country, and Britain became a very powerful country during this period too. And there's also the suggestion that some people felt that it was a moral thing to do, it was a Christian thing to do, that Britain would go overseas and aim to perhaps spread its ideas and its education and its religion overseas too. Now this obviously is a very controversial topic and requires a little bit more further reading than what I've just given you there. But that gives you a bit of introduction to what an empire is. Hopefully you've also watched the two clips at the top of the page. So by this point you have a reasonable understanding of what the British Empire was, when it came about, how much of the world it covered, and perhaps why we wanted an empire in the first place. So our job now, and your first task really, is to consider who benefited from this. So in front of you, you have 22 pieces of information. And some of those pieces of information show that Britain, the mother country, is benefiting from the existence of an empire. Some of the 22 in front of you show that the colonies, the overseas territories that Britain acquired, benefit from Britain being involved in their countries. Some of these 22 have benefits for both Britain and the colonies. And your task really is to go through these and to sort them into those three different categories. Now you can do this by printing this off and cutting them out and sticking them into three categories, or you might want to simply just write these out, maybe in your own words a little bit, and place them into the categories. And you can see you can do this in a number of ways. One of the ways in which you can do this is a huge Venn diagram like the one in front of you, where again you take information on the previous page and pop it in those three categories that we've talked about. Or you could do this just by side headings in your book. Your task is to sort those 22 pieces of information out into one of three categories. Now, once you've done that task and you've done the sorting exercise, your final task today is to quite simply answer the 2 questions that are in front of you now. And these require a little bit of thought and a little bit of explanation. So the first one is just saying, look, of all the benefits that you can see that Britain gained from having an empire during this period, which do you think was of greatest benefit to Britain, but please explain why? So maybe a short paragraph about that. And the second question is looking at it from the other side of the coin and looking at it from the colonies' point of view. What was the greatest benefit they got from Britain having this empire? What did they gain from this? So there are really 3 tasks today. You've done the first one, you've watched the videos. The second one is the sorting of the 22 pieces of information into categories. And the third one is to have a go at these 2 questions here, but again, full sentences and explain your answers, please. Once you've done this, your work is finished. However, as this is an interesting topic and a very controversial topic, particularly these days, you might look at some of the extension activities and some of the links on this Firefly page below you to do some further reading and help your further understanding of Britain's empire and who benefited from it.